G'day, fools, and welcome to Motley Fool's weekly series, What I've Been Reading, which is imaginatively titled because it's about what we've been reading. And when I say we, or I in the case of the title, I'm talking about the analysts who regularly join me each week in this particular feature. And this time, I have Motley Fool analyst Vincent Wales. Vincent, g'day.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Mate, I'm very well. Thanks for joining us. I've read this book, so I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say about narrative economics by Robert Shiller, a very well-known, very well-regarded economist and academic. Tell us about the book, if you would.
Yes. So Robert Shiller's maybe most famous for the Case-Shiller Index, which is a property index. But he also is a well-known academic that did a lot of work on how humans actually think about investing in economics. And he did a lot of work into what's called now called narrative economics. So as humans, we're not like computers. We're very good at handling small amounts of data. But when we get lots of amounts, we tend to rearrange that in the form of a narrative. So Schiller kind of formulated that into some key ideas, especially around markets, which was that markets are really driven by narratives, not just numbers. It's how people perceive the markets. So what people are really looking for is belief. So that can be optimism, an investment theme. It can be transformation, the idea that a company or sector is going to transform over the next couple of years, or in more volatile markets, perhaps safety, somewhere to run to for safety. So one of his core ideas was to compare narratives, a bit like Contagion, a bit like COVID or something like that. Starts off with patient zero or not many people, and then it can spread by wildfire, even positive loop or a negative loop, depending what the narrative is and the belief. So there are three main areas that he kind of picked up on why stories are good for humans. First was attention. We're naturally more drawn to a compelling narrative than we are to a spreadsheet with 300 lines on of data. It's just the way we are, you know?
Right.
And once we understand a narrative, that instills confidence in us, whether positive confidence or negative, that we don't like the narrative. And as this builds over time, you get coordination in the markets. Certain narratives grow and they become more prevalent in the markets, and they can actually drive markets themselves. So you get this self-fulfilling loop, fear and greed really often tied to narrative. So what are those implications, I guess, for investors in the genuine sense? First is like market insight, which will be tracking stories can help you in advance see where markets might be going. Because often sentiment shifts before the data actually does. It takes time for people to implement their investment thesis. And also, in terms of forecasting, often narratives, they precede bubbles or recessions or something because people act on their beliefs. Their beliefs come first and then the actions come after. A common thing as well, obviously, like central banks and politicians realize this and they try and finesse it. So you'll hear terms like a higher for longer, or we're going to have a soft landing. They're trying to manipulate or control the narrative to stop a panic or to smooth out people's results. So recently, of course, not so much recently now, we've got social media. And that's sped up the way that we get the speed in which we get narratives. It used to take time, used to read the paper, watch the news. Now something can happen in 20 minutes that used to take a week. So the key thing is that when the narrative aligns with the fundamentals, that's, I think, one of the key things you have to look at. We've all got those biases, so we need to make sure that we're not just caught up in the heat of a narrative and that those fundamentals actually support those. There are some real-world examples maybe to give. Some people have been in the market a bit longer than others. The dot-com bubble. Which was that the new digital economy, which was true, but this inflated valuations way above what could realistically be expected growth-wise. There's a 2008 housing bubble in the US. Houses always go up. Real estate always goes up. That was the narrative. The pandemic, that was that digital transformation is inevitable. That's true, but some companies, again, got overvalued in the short term perspectives. Currently, there's the AI boom, of course, which was AI first companies are going to be leading. That narratives recently, people might have seen that change, go, oh, that's true, but maybe investments getting a bit of ahead of itself in there. And of course, on the other side, you get the meme stocks, the Robin Hoods, where it's purely sentiment driven, but that can still drive markets. So that's really the summary of what Robert Shiller came up with. Identify the dominant narrative, map it to the real economics, test it with real data. Do the fundamentals and the narrative align? And watch out for what he calls mutation. So AI, yep, real AI companies or those that ride the wave are probably going to be more successful, but also look for changes in the narrative like, well, yeah, that's true, but the market's run ahead of itself. And we've seen that recently in the markets, especially in the US.
Beautiful, mate. Great summary of narrative economics by Robert Shiller. A fantastic book. Well worth the read. He goes a little bit of history too and talks about some of the past movements. So fantastic. If you're half interested in economics, kind of half behavioral economics, half kind of markets, it's a really, really good book and very well worth reading. Check that out. We'll have the link below on the video to an Amazon link or something else. I'm sure the guys will throw one in. Check that out. Narrative Economics by Robert Shiller. Vincent, thank you for sharing your thoughts about the book. Thanks for bringing that book to our viewers. Until next time, Fool on.